Elmhurst, our community. I'm Ken Bartels, your host, and we're coming to you from the business zone at the Community Bank of Elmhurst. Today I have Chris LaBounty, who is head of LaBounty Real Estate in Elmhurst and also the current chair of the City of Elmhurst Economic Development Commission. And we're going to be talking about Elmhurst as a train line community, as a community of the western suburbs. And Chris, welcome to Elmhurst, our community.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I want to start for our audience. I want to start by letting you talk a little bit about your extensive background in real estate, sort of how that began and how it has morphed into your current role with LaBounty Real Estate.
Sure. So I started working for a developer, a local developer in 1995 that developed Dominick shopping centers, among other grocery-anchored community neighborhood centers, and they had a grocery background. And we always knew, or their thesis was, groceries are important to everybody. Everybody shops at a grocery-anchored center. I stayed there for about 6 years doing financial analysis and accounting work for them. And then I went to work in 2001 with a broker. It was a startup firm. There were essentially two of us. And we had a great run from 2001 through 2019 selling shopping centers around the Midwest. We were licensed in about 20 states, and we sold everything retail shopping center wise. Not really so much single tenant stuff like a Walgreens or a fast food restaurant. It was mostly shopping and power centers. And by power centers, I mean, Dick's Sporting Goods, Nordstrom Rack, et cetera, with no grocery. But we also did grocery anchored centers. And so I spent a lot of time driving the Midwest and flying, et cetera. And so I saw a lot of different communities. And then in 2015, I took the listing on a parcel at Addison and First in Elmhurst, which you remember was a U.S. bank site and an office building that was fairly out of date with a lot of parking lot. And I thought this should be something else. It should be something different. And the concept of TOD was just starting to come into play there.
TOD, for the audience.
Yes, transportation-oriented development. And essentially it means you're close to transportation, like the metro lines. And so I thought this should be something different. And so I marketed that, which was a change for me. And Opus, which is a large national developer, ended up purchasing it. Now, it took about 2 years to do that. And then they bought it, closed, and this thing finally opens in April of 2019. That's the time frame these deals take to happen.
And that became the mark.
That became the mark. And I saw it come out of the ground, and I thought, there's an opportunity here, and I'm missing it. And I think with my background, which I had institutional experience, we worked with everybody from public REITs to family offices, to private individuals, to partnerships, to hedge funds, everything. And so I have a lot of this different kinds of experience. I thought, I can apply this to my community and ones like it around here. And so I started reaching out to, working with people in the community. And in January 1st, 2020, I decided it was a great time to go out on my own. And so I founded LaBounty Real Estate, LLC, and full-time jumped into focusing on train line communities. And that's where it brings me to where I am now.
Well, we're going to focus on train line questions in just a few minutes, but the whole notion of the shopping center mall concept versus the downtown, if you will, downtown city center. Can those two things coexist?
They absolutely can. What we've seen is, in the 70s, 60s, 80s, however far back you want to go, there was an exodus from the downtowns to the malls, to the shopping centers via the car. And we're seeing an unraveling of that to some extent. But yes, they can absolutely coexist. And I think the perfect example here, Oak Brook Center is just down the road. And that is a behemoth. It is a monster. It is a wonderful place. They have done a great job there. It is my understanding is still a top 5 mall, maybe top 3 mall in terms of sales in the United States. It is a beast. And yet look at all the wonderful downtowns on the BNSF line, the UP West line, that surround it. These are great places, and every single one of them has gotten stronger in the last 10 to 15 years. They're just different. That's it. They're just different.
So you mentioned transportation-related development, oriented development, and specifically in the last several months to maybe longer than that, you've been doing a lot of writing on the train line communities that you just referenced that you've been working with. So how unique is the whole concept of a train line community?
In our country, especially with recent development trends in the last 30, 40 years, it's very unique. You look across the country and see places like Phoenix and Denver and Dallas and the Southeast, and they're all wonderful communities. But what exists around here is different because the train lines were here first. It's really a function of history. And so that's what separates us, I think, from many of these other cities. It's hard to go back and put train lines into a community that don't already exist there. It's a very, look at how California is trying to do their line. It's very, very difficult to build that. I mean, we'll see what happens there, but it's not an easy, you have everyone saying no when you're trying to build a train line. Here, they already existed.
So if you can pick another community on the train line with a compare contrast with Elmhurst, let's just say Glen Ellen. Mm-hmm. So Glen Ellen's on the same train line as Elmhurst. What are the unique characteristics that when you think of a train line community, what are the ones that are the most successful, if you will?
They all have their own personality, and that's something that has taken me a while to kind of catalog and understand. You have to walk them, you have to be in them. And you might drive one and think, this feels different than Elmhurst, but you can't quite put a finger on it. But they are all different. And I think as you look at Glen Ellen, what's different about Glen Ellen versus Elmhurst? Elmhurst is close to the airport. We're the first suburb in DuPage County, so we have express trains to downtown. Glen Ellen is only 2 stops further west, right? It's a few minutes on the train, but to drive there is 20 minutes. And so it's further out. And it doesn't have that same quick access to Oakbrook Center that we do. And so the challenges for that downtown are a little different than what the challenges for Elmhurst downtown. So
specifically talking about Elmhurst, which is what we do on this program, the whole notion of downtown density, that was something, the conversation about downtown density, I don't remember ever hearing or being a part of such conversations until the Elmhurst 255, the first large apartment building, was part of the discussion. It was part of the debate. And of course, that was a very long-term process because it got interrupted by the Great Recession. You talk about that a lot in terms of how important density is to a downtown.
It is important, and density is just, it's one word, and it's not just making it more dense. Density is important. It's how you provide that density. We have developed in the last 10 years just about 800 additional units in our downtown through these 4 large apartment buildings, 255, the Finn, the Mark, and the Vine. And that's about, give or take, 800 units. And it's interesting what has happened. We haven't built additional retail space. Only one of these buildings has any first floor, well, 2 of them. 255 has some retail space, which is full, and then the Mark has retail space, which is now full. What's happened is you've added 800 units of people and not much retail space. And so the demand for those retailers and the restaurants and everything that goes with them expands. But even before those buildings, there were the condos that were built right before the crash, and those were very successful and remain successful. So we have other types of housing, and so when you think about density, there's big apartment buildings, there's small apartment buildings, and there are small apartment buildings that have been here for 100 years.
Yes. I think the other thing about we've referenced it twice already, the Great Recession of 08, 09, and all the difficulties that caused. Elmhurst downtown was spared at least some of the impact of that recession by the fact that it is a diverse downtown. But what I mean by that is you've got your boutiques and you've got your restaurants and you've got your bars and you've got the York Theater, but you also have service industries in the downtown. And that mix seemed to have the effect of insulating us a little bit from the broad-based only retail or largely retail. And yet, oftentimes you'll hear the argument of, why do we have these service industries in our downtown? What do they really do for us? They don't produce sales tax. They don't, why? Why do we have them? And we're going to get more, and we're going to come to that in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great question. We have what's called the working downtown. Okay. We have, think about some of the businesses that don't come top of mind, but you end up there on a random day. Jewel, the Ace Hardware. You might prefer to go to a Whole Foods or Mariano's or wherever, but that Jewel's right there.
Yep.
And the Ace Hardware, I'd rather go to Ace Hardware than have to go to Home Depot any day of the week. And you think about what those do is create traffic to your downtown in many different ways. There are medical uses. There are attorneys in our downtown. There's the theater in our downtown. There are a lot of different types of uses. And one of the things you talked about comparing to other train lines, the fact that we have that Jewel in our downtown brings a lot of people to the downtown. And it's an asset, whether people believe it or not, just to be able to run in quickly, get something, run back out without having to go on North Avenue or down to Roosevelt Road or over to Route 83. You can stay within the neighborhood or the community without leaving town. And so that diverse business brings foot traffic.
So you recently wrote, and I read it with some interest, you used the term to describe the York Theater. You described the York Theater as a flywheel. And you want to expand on that a little bit?
I'd love to. I think that there are some people in the Chicago area that have done some really tremendous things in their communities, some here, other places. But as you know, Willis Johnson bought the theater in, I think, 1982-ish or something like that. And if I recall correctly, it was an 1,100-seat theater at that time. It was one screen.
One screen.
One screen. Had been around since the 20s. I don't know what the city pushback would have liked, but he could very easily have torn that marquee down. And he didn't. And he reinvested, he believed in it, and now we have 10 screens, the adjustable seats, everything you'd want in a theater. It's a wonderful place. And I think when I say flywheel, there's a couple things. One, the York Theater is a symbol of this town. We have clearly adopted it as the high school is named York. There's York Street, it's York Township. But I think when people think of Elmhurst, that theater burns in their mind. And that neon is still there. And it means a lot that one person said, I'm going to keep this, and I'm going to make it special because I believe in it. That was 40-some years ago. And so it's a flywheel that's built. He kept it going, and that theater draws, I don't know how many people downtown every year. I've heard it's well into this low several hundred thousands, I think.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And
they have dinner, and they walk, and they get ice cream or a coffee or whatever it is. And it's a flywheel that grows. And then you have somebody like Gail Landers at Fitness Formula Club that says, I see something here. I'm going to build a 60,000 square foot fitness facility, and that flywheel just gets bigger and it just keeps spinning. And so when you have things like the recession, it doesn't kill everything. The other thing that's important to consider is all the different ownerships in the downtown. And that's part of the flywheel as well. But that flywheel concept is something I think is important, and every community needs something to build that, something to turn this flywheel, I guess, and grow it. And Willis has really done that well in his family.
And Chris as his
absolutely.
Successor. It's a good spot to take a break, and that's what we will do. This is Elmhurst Our Community. I'm talking to Chris LaBounty about downtown development, and we'll be right back. After many years, the wall artwork in the George F. Hammersmith Senior Community Room at the Community Bank of Elmhurst, CBE, has changed. A new digitized map of the city of Elmhurst, created by artist Julie Wirtz and installed by Treetown's Imaging and Color Graphics, now energizes the south wall of the room. Because Elmhurst is a vertical and narrow-shaped city, and the wall is horizontal and wide, the artist has changed the perspective to have north be on the far right, as though Elmhurst was lying on its right side. The digital art has all of Elmhurst's key elements, from the Quarry to the York Theater to Elmhurst University to City Hall, and many, many more. The artwork is across the room from the CBE Business Zone, so you can come by and view it very easily. Community Bank of Elmhurst. We know Elmhurst. We are Elmhurst. Welcome back. This is Elmhurst, Our Community. I'm Ken Bartels. I'm speaking with my guest, Chris LaBounty. And Chris, to get back at it, the whole notion of being a train line community, are there stages in this? Early, middle, mature, or is it just a fluid thing?
That's a great question, and I think about that, and I've thought about it more lately, and it's a continuum. You know, time goes on, right? And so if you were to say, Chris, where is Elmhurst in this TOD development? We're probably most of the way through that of big buildings. There's only space for maybe one or two, you'd have to get pretty creative, of large buildings left in town, in the downtown. Mm-hmm. You'll see some smaller stuff fill in, I believe. But that doesn't mean things won't continue to change. And if communities don't change, generally it's going to be a problem sooner or later. So I look at it more as we're here for this moment in time, and we're going to see things change as they have. And we've seen a great amount of change and the benefit, and other communities are looking at Elmhurst specifically. I hear this, I know this, saying, what are they doing right? What is it about that town? Why did they get this activity?
Well, it's interesting because right now as we're speaking, an average citizen of Elmhurst walking through city center downtown would probably say to themselves, what exactly is going on? So you're walking down First Street and you're seeing restaurants closed. You're seeing a certain limited amount of traffic, if you will, on that street. You turn the corner and you go into the downtown city center area, and the first thing you see is the York Theater building vacant in a degree of disarray. You walk a little farther down the street and you see the former Uptown shop, and people might say, gee, what's going on? Now, I know that you've had significant involvements with both those locations. So if you're walking next to that average citizen I mentioned, what do you get to tell them about that?
What I can say, especially with respect to the Furrier, it's no secret that Rush Medical plans to build a 3-story medical building there. And I think sometimes I get a lot of, I want a shop, I want a restaurant. But that owner or that tenant will bring 50 to 60 jobs to downtown Elmhurst of well-compensated people, doctors, other people who work in the medical world, and hundreds of patients on a daily basis that will go and shop elsewhere, maybe get lunch, maybe get a cup of coffee, et cetera. And so that's one I can kind of publicly speak to.
And from other communities.
Right.
Not
that's
just
absolutely
somebody
right.
that lives 3 blocks away.
That's absolutely right. That's really well said. Now, people will also say, why does this take so long? That's real estate. It's just, there is no real estate moves at its own pace. There are lots of deals I can tell you that have been in process for 5 or 6 years, some decades, and they just take a very long time.
So with Rush, with obviously at some point in time something going into the Uptown shop, other other vacancies. Our downtown vacancy rate in terms of paying rents, leases, whatnot, is like 1%. It's some unbelievably low number. So even if you walk by a storefront that's currently vacant, it's not going to be vacant very long. How long has that been the case?
I would say that coincides with bringing these 800 units into downtown in the last 10 years. I've only been around Elmhurst since the mid to late 90s, and so I don't remember as much when people talked about the 80s and said they used the phrase ghost town. But things have changed. There's a couple changes driving that. One is the density in the downtown. Two, people are recognizing Chicago communities are unique places because we have all this pre-auto development that's surrounded a train station, and it's walkable. And that's what people want. They're looking for the third places. They're looking for places where their kids can ride a bike and go meet up with other kids and grab something at Chipotle or ice cream at Kilwins or a cup of coffee at Starbucks, whatever that is. So there's two things driving that, and I think we're going to see more and more of that for the rest of my career at least.
So I want to shift gears a little bit, but not totally in any way. I mentioned in the introduction that you're currently the chair of the city's Economic Development Commission, which is 15 commissioners, including yourself, that work hard with city staff on economic development. As chair of the EDC, what do you see as its primary role?
So our charter, I guess, is, if we have an official charter, is to further economic development in Elmhurst. We are here as a resource for city council and the aldermen if they have questions or to pursue, give advice, think about things. We are also here, part of our goal is to make sure the businesses that are in town are recognized as hey, we're glad you're here, if nothing else, and thanks for being here, and is there anything you need? I will tell you, one of the things Elmhurst has, and I hear this because of work in different communities, a great reputation for business. And in dealing with City Hall, it's widely regarded as a great place to do business. And I'd like to think that, the commissioners are a part of that. We have a wide variety of people on the commission, some business owners, some aren't, but they all have a role in town. And we're a way of filtering information out to our friend network, and also hearing what is the community saying. It kind of news travels upstream a little bit too, and we hear that in our meetings and talk about things what are people talking about in town? What are they saying? What are they worried about? What are they thinking about a particular hot topic, for example?
Well, you and I both are aware that the city's in the final stages of a new zoning, a new set of zoning regulations, and in the, if you will, early analysis stage of a new downtown plan, a new city center plan. Why are things like that important to economic development?
Zoning's an interesting one. You could do 10 shows on zoning, okay? 100 years ago, it didn't exist, 100 plus years ago. It really started in, I think, New York City, where office owners were trying to protect, or office developers were trying to protect their properties. That's what brought zoning out. Zoning, in a way, can be a way of exclusion or saying no. And so what we've seen over time, and more recently, is these zoning codes sit untouched for decades. And so there's some cleanup that needs to happen because standards change, what people want to build changes, and the zoning codes don't adapt over time unless the city council says, we need to look at this. And so I think the zoning code is just that. My understanding is it's more of just bringing it current, changing some of the language, et cetera. There's no major overriding changes in that zoning update. The downtown plan is really an interesting one. And obviously I have a lot of interest in it based on what I do. Most communities around here do one. And what's interesting about these communities, they have gotten competitive with each other. And so which downtown has the latest bells and whistles, which downtown has this, which downtown has that. there is an incredible amount of jealousy between these downtowns. And the number of people I say, well, they have this or they have that. And I'm kind of thinking, look in your own backyard, because you have some great stuff too. It's just different, and that's what makes them special. But the downtown plan in Elmhurst specifically really is something I think a lot of people should take a look at and provide their input. Call your alderman and say, you know, what about this? I know that there's been discussion about, should we shut down York Street permanently or on weekends? And not to get into it, I have opinions, but I think it's an opportunity for people to say, why would we do that? And should we do that? And this is an opportunity to make your opinion known.
I think one of the things that I've run into over the years in dealing with economic development is people have this belief that the city, quote unquote, either through regulations like zoning or whatnot, all can somehow dictate or control what comes in and what doesn't. There was a point in time when it seemed like we had, 15 yogurt shops all at the same time, and ahead of that time it was bagel places and nail salons and what have you. Talk a little bit about the dynamic of city planning and private development.
That's a fascinating discussion point. I'm part of a group called Automatic, which is a networking group for mixed-use developers and tenants, et cetera. And around the country, you see some big mixed-use projects where, and a lot of them are in growing cities, et cetera, where they have a big plot of land and control everything. One developer controls most of that land and what goes in there. And you might have a yogurt shop go in there and say, no other yogurt shops coming here. Okay, so you get one. So they can kind of control the tenant mix. Downtown Elmhurst and all these downtowns are mixed-use developments. They have a little bit of everything in there. And the beauty of it is, and I mean this 100%, is you can't control it. Every entrepreneur can go into one of these downtowns and try, with certain restrictions, what they want to try. And so, yes, there was a frozen yogurt craze. There's a lot of nail salons. Why? People get their nails done, Ken. There are trends that come and go. But having these individual owners of individual parcels of all different sizes makes for an interesting collection of businesses, or can. And the city can't control that use. That's the beauty of it. Everyone gets to come in and try what they want to try, or buy a piece of real estate and do what they want to do with it.
You mentioned the, if you will, limited large-scale project potential in downtown, although, once again, we're going to get a new police station, probably get a new train station at some point, maybe a performing arts center. Those are big projects in and of themselves. But I know from talking with you and reading a lot of your LinkedIn content that there's still always this question about, why do we need big apartment buildings in our downtown? That doesn't fit with the quaint historical Elmhurst that I remember, or that I think I remember. Why are those buildings? We talked about the density, but why is that so important to the future?
They introduce people to your town that maybe aren't from here. They give them a chance to come and experience your community. I have talked to people in these buildings that are younger, and I have said to them point blank, why did you move here? What was it? And I could do this in any of these buildings across the suburbs, okay?
Sure, right.
And I hear so many times, I didn't know a place like this existed, where I could walk out my front door, hop a train to downtown. They don't want to live in the city, or they don't work in the city. And so this is convenient. And they're like, I'm not stuck in some dead-end street or on some major thoroughfare. I'm in a downtown where I can walk out and go to restaurants. So that's the young side of it, okay? Maybe it's kids who want to move back that grew up here and can't afford a house yet. But I will tell you, there are doctors, there are business owners, there are people that work at O'Hare, there are all sorts of people in these buildings. They're really an interesting collection of people, and I think it makes a community stronger and better.
And they're full.
They're very full.
Are full in the sense that management always wants a little flexibility in those buildings.
They are stabilized, and the age range is from 80 to baby. You see a little bit of everybody in those buildings.
So, last question before our time needs to be over today. In your world, what's the short-range future look like for downtown Elmhurst, the train line community Elmhurst?
It's very strong. It's amazing the interest we have. I will say this, and I think he deserves some credit. Tony Gambino tore down a building and built a beautiful patio for Victory, okay? And I want to give him credit for that, because when you walk down York Street now, it looks different. And I will say, with the addition of these buildings, there's a change, and I see it in the land values, and I see it in rents. It's kind of leveled up. It is not the same town it was 3 years ago, or 5, or 10, or 15. It has continued to change. I think the future is very strong here. I think Elmhurst has done a great job. 24% of our housing stock has been built in this town, believe it or not, since 2000.
I do believe it, yeah.
And that includes tear downs, I believe everything. That's a government number, not something I did. But the strength of the market is going to continue. And not just Elmhurst. All of Chicago's train lines are benefiting from this because they're great places to live.
Chris, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. It's an interesting topic that we'll revisit again.
I would love to.
This is Chris LaBounty. I've been talking with him about downtown Elmhurst and the whole area of economic development. For Elmhurst, our community, I'm Ken Bartels, and we'll see you again. After many years, the wall artwork in the George F. Hammersmith Senior Community Room at the Community Bank of Elmhurst, CBE, has changed. A new digitized map of the city of Elmhurst, created by artist Julie Wirtz and installed by Treetown's Imaging and Color Graphics, now energizes the south wall of the room. Because Elmhurst is a vertical and narrow-shaped city, and the wall is horizontal and wide, the artist has changed the perspective to have north be on the far right, as though Elmhurst was lying on its right side. The digital art has all of Elmhurst's key elements, from the Quarry to the York Theater to Elmhurst University to City Hall, and many, many more. The artwork is across the room from the CBE Business Zone, so you can come by and view it very easily. Community Bank of Elmhurst. We know Elmhurst. We are Elmhurst.